Welcome to Buddhist Daily. This is our Buddhist question series. I'm Tal, your host, and here to answer our questions is Lama Dawa. Hi, Lama Dawa.
Hi, Tal, and hi, everybody.
Can you explain the different schools of Buddhism for us?
Sure. Um, Different schools of Buddhism evolved over time based on different cultures and kind of an unfolding of what people were able to receive. So, the early phase of Buddhism is known as the Theravadan school. It's the form of Buddhism today that is practiced in, we say, southern countries, meaning Southeast Asian countries like Thailand, Burma, and those places. So that's the southern school, and it is considered to be very true to the kind of early teachings. After that, we have what's called Mahayana Buddhism. Mahayana literally means a broader kind of perspective. And what we mean by that is Mahayana has a focus of compassion and emphasizes uh, compassion, kindness, and of course ethical behavior, which is also very much part of the Theravada, which is also known as the early school. Um, Theravadan Buddhism, to go back for a moment, is focused a lot on, we say, self liberation, meaning I need to improve my state of mind, um, my sort of karmic destiny, you could say. So it's a lot of sort of concern for oneself and one's own spiritual journey. Mahayana, why we call that the broader school or broader path, is because it brings more beings into the picture. And what I mean by that is in the Mahayana style of practice, we actually make aspirations that we are not just practicing a spiritual path for ourselves alone, but to help other beings. So there is this larger framework where we are, in a sense, inviting all beings to the dinner table and bringing them into our world. And we are also extending ourselves out into their world. So there's that kind of approach. It's a little more uh, broad based. And in the Mahayana school, we talk about the paramitas. It's sometimes called the paramita yana. Yana means vehicle. Paramita means literally means something like transcendental actions. And we talk about generosity and patience and ethics and action and wisdom and meditation. So these are actually parts of the Mahayana practice as a practitioner. It's not solely meditation. It is, of course, as all Buddhist schools are based on meditation, as sort of the foundation, you could say. But actually, one's engagement in the world is very important in Mahayana Buddhism. So, how we interact with others. That's why we talk about being patient and we talk about generosity, these kinds of things. The next vehicle, or yana, is called Vajrayana. This is the form of Buddhism that took root in, we often say, the Himalayan countries. This is Bhutan, northern India, Nepal, Tibet, of course, most famously. So these are this is called the Northern School of Buddhism sometimes, as is Mahayana. But in Vajrayana, we use a lot of different kinds of practices. This is where mantras come in. This is where visualizations happen. And then things we talk about with empowerments and so on. In the Vajrayana, which is also known as Tantric Buddhism, we work also with the energies of the body, and we start to explore more the relationship of purity, in having a pure view of the world. Sometimes we think of the world as a sacred place. And in Vajrayana or Tantric Buddhism, we say we take fruition as the path, meaning we embrace the fact that we already have and have always had Buddha nature. So in Tantric or Vajrayana style Buddhism, also, as I said, Himalayan Buddhism, we work with Buddhist deities, which are visualized embodiments of enlightened principles. And these can be visualized as external to ourselves, as reminders and reflections of ourself, our own pure nature, our own pure qualities, enlightened qualities. And we also visualize ourselves sometimes when we get the proper empowerments and so on, visualize ourselves in those forms as well. So that's a very unique and different form of Dharma or Buddhism. So we sometimes say it's like going to a fine restaurant and there's many items on the menu. There is no one size fits all. Everyone is not being shoehorned into a certain style of practicing Buddhism. If basic mindfulness practice is your cup of tea and what you is appropriate for you, you do that. You work on those practices. That's Theravadan style. Now, in the, let's say, Vajrayana, the lower, the previous yanas or vehicles are also incorporated in. So mindfulness is in all vehicles. And really in all vehicles, kindness of the heart, compassion, thinking of others, these pervade all of them. But there is a slight difference in focus and emphasis. When we talk about Thai Buddhism and Vipassana, this is generally more the Theravadan school. When we talk about Mahayana Buddhism, we often talk about Zen Buddhism. Zen is a classic form of Mahayana Buddhism. And Zen in different forms is practiced traditionally and historically and to the present day in mainland China, in Vietnam, in Korea, and Japan. Those are the Mahayana typically. Now, these are generalizations, but holds up. So we're very fortunate if we're born in the West or we live in the West, we have access to all these different schools. And I like to encourage people to study and become familiar, at least on a basic level, with the different schools of Buddhism. Many Westerners come into Buddhism, especially in America. A lot of them jump into Tibetan Buddhism because it seems to be sort of more prevalent, and there's been many lamas and teachers, and people jump into that. Often without a good grounding in sort of the very basic Buddhist principles and teachings, such as the Four Noble Truths and things like that. So myself as a teacher, and from my own practice and experience, I really like to encourage and emphasize for people to start with a good grasp, a good understanding of basic Buddhist principles.
So thank you for that, Lama Dawa. I appreciate your explanation of the different schools of Buddhism. A follow-up to that is, why does compassion matter in Buddhism if it's about our own enlightenment?
Okay, a very good question. It does follow on what we were talking about, especially with the emphasis in Mahayana and Vajrayana on compassion. You could say that compassion also benefits ourselves, because otherwise we lapse into a self-centered kind of, this is all about me, which is the reinforcement of ego and the reinforcement of this sense of dualistic separation, which is exactly what Buddhism is trying to resolve. or you could even say eradicate this sense of a separate self. Because we have a self, this is why we suffer, because we have this self-identity. Compassion is a natural expression of awareness of the big picture, that we are all interconnected, that everything is interrelated. We are not separate from the whole. We're not separate from others. That's the illusion that has kept us in the cycle of samsara or rebirth or becoming. By extending ourselves, we soften the sense of isolation and separation. We are also giving rise to acknowledgement of a truth that we are actually related to all other beings. We are all alive and sentient and going through the challenges of inherent in life, of being born. All beings share this in common. We all age and go through a whole process. We all experience the unfolding of our own karma, for better and for worse. We all get sick. We all die eventually. We all lose our loved ones and things that we're attached to. So it's spiritual common sense to be compassionate, but let's say it's not something that we have to force or should be too contrived. It's just allowing ourselves to feel what's natural to us. It's natural to care about others. It's unnatural to just want to have everything for oneself and be that selfish and self-centered. So meditation, Buddhist philosophy and study, and just the spiritual path in general is about becoming a kinder person, a more open person, a more humble person, respectful of others. It all goes together. We are social beings. We live in a society and in a world where everything is connected. So I think that's the answer to why compassion is important on the spiritual path.
Any tips on how to be compassionate towards people who are difficult or nasty, or that may, in our perspective, not deserve compassion, so to speak, or maybe you think everybody does, but just to how do you do that?
Well, we do it like everything, step by step, and practicing kindness, practicing understanding that people are not inherently bad or evil. They're confused because they're confused, and we're confused too. We're not perfect ourselves. So the compassion that starts with ourselves, we can try to extend to others. I think on a practical level, we start with some kind of patience and spaciousness, if I could use that word, spaciousness, in terms of when we relate to others, if we can start slowly and this helps helpful through meditation practice, to see that we have all these expectations. We expect things from others. We expect them to respond a certain way, to say things a certain way, to think a certain way. And we have to allow others to be their own flawed selves as we are flawed ourselves. So we have to cut them slack, cut ourselves slack. Yeah, it's not easy always, and we can fall back into old patterns. We all do. But that's the spiritual path, is we get back up and we keep going and keep resolving to be better. I think by acknowledging that we do see the value and worthiness of others, and then we can drop some of our judgmentalness. We don't have to be so critical and judgmental. We need to soften ourselves a little bit. And as I said, cut ourselves slack, cut them slack. Just, we don't have to expect things to be perfect or other people to be perfect. We're not perfect ourselves. So I think that's how it begins, is just resolving and having an aspiration to, I want to be kind. I want to be a kind person. I want to be as kind as I can, and I want to improve and expand my kindness. And that's kind of the journey. You know, Buddhism is about reaching our potential. That's what we really say. In the 60s, late 60s and 70s, there was something called the human potential movement. And Buddhism is really a human potential movement. It's about reaching our potential as human. What is our potential? The Buddha was not a god or something like that. The Buddha was a human being who reached his full potential as a human being. He dropped the sense of a separate self. And what's replaced when you drop the separate self is a fully awake, loving presence. That's our potential. We have that in us. It's just hidden, covered up, buried, whatever you want to say. So practicing compassion is very much part of the spiritual path, as much as meditation on the mat. They are, you could say, equally important.
So I think my initial question, even though that's a great answer, I was asking more towards people who have done, and I wasn't clear, that's my fault, who've done, let's say, should we or how do we handle compassion for people who have acted in awful ways like murder or things of that nature?
Well, I don't know that I would change my answer. There's not much more to say about that. You know, in the Christian world, we talk about turn the other cheek. Again, there's a sense of forgiveness, because even if they're an awful person or they've done awful things, it doesn't necessarily mean their core is evil or bad. They are confused. We can have compassion for their confusion, you know, and maybe people respond to a little bit of kindness and caring about them and compassion and empathy. You know, we can try to just retaliate when someone does us wrong. That maybe just perpetuates things. You know, it's not about, you know, let's say blaming others. Isn't it about finding solutions and how do we heal the problems of the world? Yeah, there's bad people, awful people, people doing terrible things, but they're confused. They're playing out some kind of karmic drama of their own, and that's not to excuse them at all. It's not about excusing them or giving them a free pass. But we have to understand on a broader level. And if we're angry at somebody, does that hurt them? No, it hurts ourselves. We're actually doing violence against ourselves with our anger, because it's changing our mind and making our mind uptight and unhappy and frustrated and irritable and angry and all these things. We're hurting ourselves when we get angry at somebody else. We think it's justified and so on, but it doesn't solve anything. So I think using a little logic and thinking it through like that may be a little bit helpful. And also, as I said, understanding that everybody's on their own journey here. You know, we are all interrelated, but we need to figure out better solutions than just retaliation and getting angry. And as the cliche says, peace starts with oneself. So maybe we need to de-escalate things within ourselves and then move from there. Set an example.
Thank you for that, Lama Dawa. Thank you, Lama Dawa, and for recording these podcasts with me. Thank you for watching Buddhist Daily. Please check out our other related videos at youtube.com/@Buddhist Daily. Please submit your questions in the comment section below. Thank you again, Lama Dawa.
Thank you, Tal, for hosting this, and thank you all for listening and being here with us. We appreciate you and love to invite your questions and comments, anything you would like to discuss. We enjoy that very much, and hopefully it's of some benefit.
See you next time.
Please like, subscribe, and share the video with your friends and family. See you next time.